Areena.
Purchasing power is down and the cost of living is up. So this week, we're going in search of ways to help you stretch your budget. Hello and welcome to All Points North. I'm Egan Richardson.
And I'm Zena Iovino. Today's show is all about holding on to your hard-earned money.
And it couldn't be more timely. In recent months, the financial news hasn't exactly been uplifting. On last week's show, we explored Finland's tough job market. We've also reported recently on the worst decline in purchasing power in a generation. In other words, most of us are having to tighten our belts.
You're right about that. Inflation has been eroding people's purchasing power in Finland ever since it peaked in 2021. Now, to put that into perspective, the average earner in Finland has effectively lost about 2 months' salary, or around 7,000 euros, just to inflation.
Not to mention the social security changes that took effect this year have cut real incomes for those relying on benefits, making it even harder for them to make ends meet.
What strategies have you found that help keep your food budget in check, Egan?
Well, I like to keep an eye out for offers and deals, that's for sure. It's probably one of my hobbies, in fact, but I also buy in bulk when I can. You'll often get a better price if you buy in larger volumes and keep things in the pantry ready for when you might need them. But it's gotten more difficult in recent years, that's for sure.
That's true, and that's why on today's episode, we're focusing on practical ways to stretch your grocery budget. I went shopping with a consumer economics expert to uncover smart strategies for saving money on food, which, as you know, is one of the biggest budget line items after housing. Taru Karonen of the Martha Association joined me on a weekday shopping trip. We're here at Lidl because time and again, studies have shown Lidl to be the most affordable place to buy your essential basic foods. So we've just walked in the store. Where should we start, Taru?
Well, usually most grocery shops start with the produce section, which is great because that's where you'd want to buy most of your food because, plant-based is always good. And many shops usually portray seasonal produce pretty well. Like you don't necessarily have to know yourself what's in season. You can always pick out the ones that are on display and sometimes even signposted as seasonal produce. And that's where you should start really because that's normally the most affordable when something is in season, and it tends to be tastier and like full of nutritious things in it. So start with seasonal produce always.
Okay, it is January in Finland. Maybe not the best time for seasonal produce. No. And we're standing in front of some potatoes. What are some staples you see here that we could use to rustle up an economical meal?
Yeah, well, it's true. Winter, it's a difficult period of time in Finland, but we do have like our store cupboard staples like potatoes, root vegetables, onions, cabbages, which are usually pretty affordable, and they keep well. So they keep well in the store, so you can buy them all year round, but they also keep well in your fridge. So from here, what I see, I'd buy potatoes, carrots, other root vegetables if they have like celeriac or parsnips, for example.
Okay, what are some easy meals you would make from these ingredients?
Well, soups come to mind immediately, of course, because you can chuck anything in, even if there's something that's, doesn't look very pretty anymore in the vegetable drawer. Just chuck it in the soup pot. Casseroles as well, or you can chop all the root vegetables up and put them in the oven and roast them, and then either eat as such or blend them into a pasta sauce or something like that, which is a great way of using vegetables, maybe even to those picky kids, because you can just blend them into a tomato sauce, for example.
All right, so not everybody is a home chef. What is the easiest thing you can make that's going to hurt your wallet the least?
Peel and chop a bunch of root vegetables, perhaps a bit of onion and garlic there as well, some potato. Just boil them. If you have a stock cube, put that in for some extra flavor, and then just puree that. If you have a stick blender, voila, you have a soup. That's the easiest. It doesn't get any easier than that.
Okay. We often hear we should be having more protein.
Mm-hmm.
What about protein now?
Well, you could always add protein there as well. And as we know, we should be transferring towards more plant-based protein. And I think dried red lentils are the easiest. They're usually quite affordable. They cook in 10 minutes. And you can just chuck them in the sauce pot as well, or the soup pot, and just blend them after 10 minutes. So that's the easiest thing. But also all sorts of beans are affordable, and if they're tinned, they're ready to use. You don't have to soak them and boil them first, even though the dried ones are a bit less expensive, but even the tinned ones aren't that expensive really.
So we've arrived in the frozen food aisle. Now, you've been singing the praises of frozen vegetables. Why is that?
Well, because it's affordable way to add vegetables to your diet, and if you are a busy person, living a hectic life, perhaps with kids, sometimes you don't have the time to peel and chop lots of vegetables. So you can buy a bag of mixed veggies and just throw that into the soup or in the pasta sauce or in a casserole. And they are actually very nutrition packed. Sometimes people think that they're poor in nutritional value because they're frozen, but that's not true at all, because they're frozen quickly and at very low temperatures, very different to your home freezer, so they retain most of their nutritional value. My personal favorite is frozen peas, because you can get Finnish peas if you want to support Finnish food production, and they're quite affordable. You can just put them into anything, and you can eat them fresh, you can eat them in soups, very versatile. And that also, if you put a deciliter of peas, that's about 60 grams. So that's more than enough for your recommended daily. We're recommended to eat peas and beans for 50 or 100 grams a day. So that will be enough for the day.
So we've arrived in the dried goods section, and we are looking at some beans. You said red lentils are one of your favorites because they're so nutritious and affordable. What else should we be looking at?
Yeah, red lentils are good. You can find them ready cooked, but I usually buy the dried ones because they last longer. And then, you can use just a little bit if you want to add just a bit of protein and a bit of texture. And they only take 10 minutes to cook. But if you want to take the really easy route with beans, just buy the tinned, or they sometimes in cartons like we're seeing here, and then just strain them, maybe rinse them because that's extra salt there because they're in the salty liquid. And they're ready to use. You can use them cold in salads. You can pop them into, again, those soups, or make, chili con carne or something like that, which is usually a family favorite. You can maybe replace half of the minced meat in your basic, macaroni casserole with beans. The kids might not even notice it, or if they do, they still have sort of the familiar flavor there, but you are saving money a bit and making it a bit more healthy with added plant-based protein.
All right, and right behind us is my personal favorite, the coffee section, and the price of coffee has gone through the roof. It has definitely dented my budget. I have switched from ground coffee to beans. What else can you do to satisfy that caffeine addiction?
Well, that's a difficult one because Finns, as you said, we drink loads of coffee. Maybe cutting down a bit, maybe, I don't know, that's a horrifying thought, isn't it? We also waste coffee quite a lot in Finland. I can't remember the exact numbers, but you make the full pot, you don't drink it all, and then you pour it down the drain. So maybe start trying to make the exact amount so you're not wasting the coffee. Also, you can always look up offers if you're not very particular about the brand. Sometimes shops have 3 packets for 10 euros. Well, that's quite rare now because that would be really cheap, but sometimes you can see that. Other than that, there's not really much we can do. I mean, the world market price for coffee is really high at the moment, and we can't really, help that in any way other than, check that we're not wasting the coffee that we buy.
And that was my shopping experience with Taru Karonen of the Martha Association with some handy and healthy cooking tips.
So we've got the groceries covered, and there were some excellent tips there from Taru. I do like my plant-based protein and soups. They're top tips there. But this time of year, energy bills can be sky high, especially if you rely on electricity to heat your home. So this week I asked Energy Markets Professor Samuli Honkapuro of Lappeenranta University about his top tips for saving on your energy bills. He said that so-called spot price contracts are a good way for consumers to cut their costs.
Well, I would say that in Finland we have lowest electricity price in Europe, and at the same time our price volatility is highest. So lowest price but highest variation of prices between hours and between days. So there's lots of potential to get benefits by having this spot price based supply contract, and then scheduling any larger electricity use to those lower price hours. So I think that's at the moment very good tip for having the lower bills.
So this is interesting in that Finland has an unusual system where some 30% of households have selected a spot price contract. That means the price of electricity changes every hour. Do you have that kind of contract, Zena?
Well, you know I do, and it tends to be the cheapest even if there are peaks in prices. Now, it's really nice to hear that, you've made the right decision. But what I found, though, with this kind of contract is that sometimes you just need to use your household appliances even when costs are high.
This is true, and sometimes when you're aware that you're paying a high price, it's psychologically difficult to maintain this spot price mentality. Not all of us have an economist's training, so we're sometimes get anxious about these fluctuations. So there are peaks of prices, and if you have a load of washing to do, you just have to pay the prices no matter what. And that's because of all the renewable energy in the Finnish electricity market. If it's windy, the turbines produce so much power the price drops close to zero or even below. And if it's not windy, electricity gets quite expensive.
It does. For example, last weekend, it can be a little stressful to follow the prices hour by hour. But you went to find out about a possible solution to this, didn't you?
I did. Domestic batteries could help smooth out the peaks, allowing people to buy their power when it's cheap and use it when it's more expensive, or even sell it on the power markets. So I went to see Rami Alisawi to talk about his battery company, Nelinor. Now, he started selling large-capacity domestic batteries when he realised that he could radically simplify the kind of systems people were using in some places to live off-grid. When he started, during 2022, Finland's power market was in turmoil due to the end of energy imports from Russia. Rami found the battery useful in that period.
And the funny part, at the peak of the energy crisis, when the prices were really going crazy up and down, I installed the first unit obviously at my place. And on some days, I was making the utility company pay me because I charge so cheap and sell when it's so expensive. It covered all my consumption, and I actually sold them more than I consumed.
Now, that seems like a great deal. How much does this thing cost, and how long would you have to use it to see a return on your investment?
That's the key question for us this week, looking to save money from a consumer perspective. So the current battery they sell goes for more than €5,000. It's a big investment. Rami says it could pay for itself within 5 or 6 years in current market conditions. But of course, those market conditions could change. It could be quicker or it could take longer.
That's a big chunk of money. Maybe it's not for everyone.
True, it is a big investment, but keep in mind that this is a basically plug-and-play solution. You just connect the battery to Wi-Fi, choose the settings you want in the app, and it will automatically buy and sell electricity according to your preferences and according to the market prices at that time. Rami told me that Nelinor is looking to develop another smaller model that would go for €2,000 around about, and might pay for itself on a quicker timescale, as it could sell power in multiple markets at once. There are some technical reasons where there's one market which is the day-ahead market, and then there are other power markets as well. At the moment, you can only sell power on the day-ahead market once you agree a contract with your electricity firm. But he wants people to be able to have other options too. And that might save some money for our listeners in the future if this product comes out and is able to do what he says.
Well, it all sounds like it makes sense, but will this solution be adopted more widely?
That's a good question. I also asked Samuli Honkapuro how he sees the future of electricity markets. He said that some form of storage is likely to be part of the energy mix in future, and it might well come from electric cars and something called bi-directional charging. This is when you also send power to the grid as well as drawing power down. So then your car would function like the domestic batteries that some companies are trying to sell at the moment. So it does look like the future will include multiple options to buy your electricity when it's cheap and a lot more renewable capacity in the market as opposed to the fossil fuel powered power stations and the nuclear power stations that we have relied on for much of the last century. As we kick off the year, it's not just inflation and job market struggles that are making headlines. New tax rules are also shaking things up. The start of this year has brought a wave of tax changes, and they're hitting both consumers and businesses. For starters, the VAT rate on books, medicines, accommodation, and things like sports, entertainment, and cultural services has jumped from 10 to 14%.
And on top of that, tax deductions are shrinking. If you are planning any home improvements, you'll now get less back. The maximum household tax credit has dropped from €2,250 to €1,600.
Also on the house front, there's no longer a system in place deducting your home mortgage interest, a change that's been phased out over several years.
Okay, but I wanted to focus on some positive aspects for a minute, which is why I called up Kati Hannikainen of the Taxpayers Association to ask what wage earners can do to save on their income taxes this year.
From what I've heard, there doesn't seem to be much we can do.
You're kind of right, but Kati actually has a really great tip for some of us. Let's hear what she has to say.
I think most of us who, after the pandemic, work at least a part-time from home and telecommute, they all, of course, have to remember that they have a right to make this deduction for the workspace at home. So that's probably the most important deduction for wage earners. It's now 960, and this applies to year 2024. So last year that you now have to file the tax return for. So that 960 is for all of us or all of those who either work only from home or for those who work more than 50% from home.
Okay, so that €960 deduction is something to keep in mind for those of you working from home, and you should apply it to last year's taxes. It's not yet clear how much this deduction will be in 2025 or if it will still exist. That decision will be made later in the year, but add the information to your tax form anyway.
Another point we discussed with Kati was the new tax reduction for families with minor children. So you'll see a reduction of €50 per child in your taxes, so just under €5 a month. The best part is that this benefit applies automatically to both parents.
And single parents can double that amount, so €100 per child, just over €8 per month. A little relief for families at least, but we'd love to hear from you. How are you stretching your euros in these tricky times? What do you think about Finnish taxes? Drop us a message or share your tips. We're always happy to hear from you in WhatsApp. Send us a message or a voice note via +358 44 421 0909. Let's have a look at what else has been making the news in Finland this week. In opening Parliament after the winter break, President Alexander Stubb said that US foreign policy will pose a challenge for Finland and Europe during the upcoming parliamentary term. MPs meanwhile re-elected former Finns party chair Jussi Halla-aho as Speaker, despite some opposition members questioning his impartiality.
Finland's leading business lobby, the Confederation of Finnish Industries, wants to see the corporate tax rate lowered to 15%, down from the current level of 20%.
Meanwhile, more than 250,000 people received Keller's last resort social benefits in 2023. Young adults were overrepresented amongst social assistance recipients.
The World Health Organization has called on Finland and the other Nordics to keep their alcohol monopolies in place to help protect public health. The WHO says that the monopolies have helped keep consumption low and reduced alcohol-related harms.
More new fathers are taking advantage of parental leave since rules changed some 3 years ago. In 2022, only 12% of fathers used their parental leave, but the following year, that share grew to 21%.
In liturgical news, a Helsinki church plans to offer an AI-generated service. An artificial intelligence tool will write the sermon, prayers, hymns, and music. It will also do the talking using the faces and voices of ministers familiar to the congregation.
birdwatchers have reported several sightings of early migratory birds in southwest Finland. However, a longer cold spell could force these birds to temporarily return south.
And that might still be the case, as we also reported this week that the mercury dropped to about 40 below in Finnish Lapland. Have you spotted any early birds, Egan?
I think I did the other week when it got to around 5 degrees or so in the south, and you could hear a little bird song. It was quite nice, but it is a little bit depressing when you think that things are going to get cold again.
You can join the conversation too. We want to hear what's on your mind. Just leave us a voice note or text on WhatsApp. Our number is +358 44 421 0909.
This year, we're excited to launch a new segment called Ask Us Anything. If you've got a question, ask us, and we'll do our best to find the answer. Send us a message or a voice note on +358 44 421 0909.
One person who did just that is Antti Niemistö, who sent us the following message. Now he says, I have heard that ever since Finland joined NATO, driver's licenses for member countries would be accepted in Finland. Is this true, or would a citizen from outside the EU, but in a NATO state, still need to take the Finnish driving test?
So I called Traficom, the agency in charge of driving licenses here in Finland, to ask about this for Antti. They said that it's not true. There's been no change in the driving licence rules as a result of NATO membership. You can check the process for swapping your licence on Traficom's website.
Our fellow APN host Ronan looked at the difficulties of finding a job in Finland last week. It struck a chord with many of our listeners, including Peter Fardi, who had suggestions on how to improve things for foreigners in Finland. Let's listen.
Hi guys, I was listening to last week's podcast about where foreigners can't find work in Finland, and it made me realise that there's a huge disconnect between the unemployment office's training and integration schemes for foreigners and also the private companies who are supposed to hire the foreigners after they, we'll say, graduate from the integration courses. So it's often a case where the unemployment office offers full-time language courses and training schemes for foreigners to work or to retrain, but then when they're finished, the companies based in Finland won't hire them. I think one solution that the government could introduce would be that private companies would have access to tax breaks for new employees based on foreigners' Finnish language skills, based on the exams that the foreigners do in their full-time language courses, or maybe even the Yuki test. So I think that would be a tangible reward for the foreigner for engaging in these integration schemes, but also then that there would be an obvious financial incentive for the companies in hiring foreigners.
And that was Pado Faherty telling us about his plan to get people into jobs. Do you agree with his idea? Or perhaps you think there's another way to improve the job market for foreigners? Let us know via +358 44 421 0909.
It's almost a wrap for today, but before we go, did you have a nice Runeberg Day, Egan?
I did. I always do. Runeberg Day, named after Finland's national poet, Johan Ludvig Runeberg, is, of course, my favourite Finnish festival. And Runeberg pastries are, for those who don't know, a confection featuring jam and arak, punch or bitter almond oil, often disappearing from shops and cafes after February the 5th, which was Wednesday.
Now, we had some drama surrounding these pastries recently after we incorrectly reported on yle.fi/news that they contained aniseed.
Yeah, only the big stories on Yle News. We have the hard news for you on our website. But yeah, it's good to correct the record there. There's no aniseed in these particular cakes, though they are absolutely delicious. So yeah, apologies for that. And if you do make any Runeberg tortut, send us pictures, please.
Right, and there was also debate about whether they're even pastries or cakes, or maybe they're muffins. Either way, Egan, I brought some here for us today to enjoy after the show. Bought on sale, of course, since the holiday was, as you said, 2 days ago. The Marthas would be proud.
They would, and of course these cakes are delicious. I'm really enjoying them right now. But we really do love to hear from our audience on pastries or anything else. So to comment on news articles and to get our weekly newsletter, you just need to sign up for an Yle ID. To register, go to yle.fi/ID. And if you have that ID, you'll also get our weekly newsletter, which includes our special tip on what to stream on Yle Areena.
So what is your tip for us this week?
I'm going to have to go with House of Gucci. It's an extraordinary true story of the family behind the Italian fashion empire and features a star-studded cast.
Well, that checks many boxes for me, so I will need to check it out. And that's all we have time for today. Thanks for listening, and thanks to our audio engineer today, Juha Hjelm. Bye.
Bye.